Welcome back into another episode of Jacket Sports Weekly, and we talk about everything Waynesburg athletics: football, volleyball, soccer, basketball, and wrestling. All of it for you here on this episode. I'm Logan Lepiscopo, joined by Seth Adams. And Seth, let's just hop straight into things with the football team, or should I say Zane Colley defeating the Bethany Bison.
Crazy game. Awesome 35-26 win against Bethany at Bethany. Great win, 2-7. We're climbing, all right? We're climbing, we're getting there, okay? Zane Colley, 336 yards rushing on 41 attempts and 4 touchdowns. That's 8 yards a carry. 8 yards a carry, and the team total had 404 rushing yards. So a great execution and a great game from the Waynesburg Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, going into that game, Bethany is the worst rush defense in the PAC. And Zane Colley's now Waynesburg University record, breaking a 16-year-old record. Zane Colley with the 336 rushing yards. Moving on to the athletics that made it into some postseason play, men's and women's soccer. Unfortunately, both teams fell to their opponents by a 3-1 score, but a very impressive season from the two squads.
Yeah, it was great. They had a great run. I feel like both teams will even be at that level again next year or even better. We'll get more into it later, but they have a lot of seniors who will be missing from both the men and the women, so a lot of freshmen and underclass are going to have to step up. So we're going to see who those potential guys or women are going to be to step up for this new squad next year.
Yeah, so the men, they lost to Geneva, and Geneva ended up winning the PAC title, their first time since 2016, bringing home that title. So congratulations to them. And same for the women's. They lost to the team that eventually ended up winning the PAC championship. Grove City now has their third title in the last 6 years for women's soccer. And now moving on to volleyball, they had 2 matches that we talked about last week. You go in, you have to go and play Chatham, then you come back, play Allegheny for senior day. A tough 2 final games.
Yeah, a very tough final game as they lost 0-3 against Allegheny on their senior day. Not obviously the way you want to go out, but they did have close games throughout the whole. Every set was close. They lost 25-23, 25-23 again, and then kind of lost the steam at the end, losing 25-11. But it has been an improvement from last year. Maybe next year we can even have some more improvement and have a little more wins in the conference than this year.
Yeah, this year the Lady Jays finished 10th in the PAC with a 1-9 conference record and an 8-17 overall record. Now moving down, wrestling. Seth, they had the Ted McKinley Invitational, and who else but the man himself.
Colby Morris, man, had an outstanding performance and won it all. He is ranked 7th in the entire nation right now. He is an absolute beast, and he won the 174-pound contest. He won all 5 of his games, and he won the whole weight class. First round, he won with a pin. Quarterfinal, he won with a pin as well. Semifinal, he actually wrestled all 7 minutes for the first time ever in his career, and he won that game 10-5. And then for the final, it was a scoreless first period. Then he rode the opponent the whole entire time and got the win 5-1 for the squad and made such an impactful moment for this wrestling team.
Yeah, the wrestling team as a whole finished 11th out of 13 teams, but Colby Morris has been the highlight of the wrestling team since his time being here. And then just to kind of close things out, men's and women's basketball is coming up. We don't have any big segments this week, but we will in the coming weeks. Men's basketball will start, as the time you're seeing this, tomorrow. They will be hosting McDaniel for their first game of the year. And then the women's team will play Thursday. They will be playing Muskingum, all at Rudy Marisa Fieldhouse, all covered by the Waynesburg University Sports Network. That's going to close out our opening segment. Just giving you a quick rundown of all the Woo athletics. We'll be right back with some Waynesburg soccer. Welcome back in for our first segment here on Jacket Sports Weekly. Seth and I still at the desk, but now joined by Joey Cirillo to talk about the men's and women's soccer teams. We'll start on the women's side of things. An unfortunate loss in the semifinals, 3-1 to the Grove City Wolverines. From looking at the box score, you wouldn't expect Waynesburg to have lost this game. So what went wrong for the ladies?
Well, what went wrong here was mainly the ladies I think they got caught up in that PAC playoff contention. They got caught up in that. They were a little too excited. They got there, but they did do very well against this team. But eventually it just came down to their offense was there, but not as much as they'd like, and their backfield just really crumbled.
Yeah, so we look at the shots and the shots all in total. Waynesburg had 20 shots. They had 20 shots, 8 on goal, and Grove City had 19 and 13 shots on goal. So they were in it the whole time, Joey.
They were.
Shots-wise. So how come they weren't able to get those shots in the net? Like, what was preventing them from scoring or everything like that? Was the
I think what was really preventing them here was that there was a lot of times that they were just going down, like Moorbacher and mainly just Moorbacher was really just going down by herself, not really having a lot of help on that side. She really would come in on the left or right sides, not in the center or anything, and it would just be her, which isn't a bad thing all the time, but in this playoff contention, you need to be a team and you need to be working together, not just as Moorbacher. You can't just be her. So I think that mainly got to them where they had a bunch of shots, but it was because she was going down, she didn't really have a bunch of room, and she just had to put it in there somehow. So that really got to them there offensively with those 20 shots.
And then looking on the defensive side of the ball, this isn't a defensive line we typically see, give up a lot of shot opportunities. You have the veterans on that defensive line, Grace Ingram, Courtney Grove, just to name a couple of them. So what happens when Alexis Greenleaf has to make 10 saves but allows 3 goals? What just collapses defensively?
I think that eventually once you have those 3 goals go behind, and I think when they got that first one that went behind, it was really early on. I think it was like 2 minutes in. Your morality in that portion just goes away. You don't really think about what you're doing. You're just like, oh my gosh, I just let a goal go through. What are we doing? What's going on? And it just kind of crumbled from there. I don't think it was mainly anything physically that was going on with them. I think it was just a lot of, they were really excited. They had all those jitters in them. And Grove City came out right away, scoring on them, and it just crumbled.
Yeah, we'll take a look into more of just like the team in general and what we can look forward to next year. Is this kind of like a one-hit year for the women's soccer team? Because the history has not been too great. So do you think this year will kind of cement the rest of the next coming years, or will it just be like a one-and-done kind of thing?
I think that for this team right here, they look positive, and I think they're going to get there. Moorbacher being that person that just came out and shined. She did well on the season. She had 12 goals, which led the team this year, and a sophomore, Mittendorf, had 9. So this team being very young and very progressive, they can get there. They just need to be led the right way. This team can do it, and I know they can. I think next year their ceiling for this team is going to be a championship run. You definitely have to get into the playoffs. That's your floor. At this point, the women's team, they got there on their own. They didn't have anything that they needed to rely on. They didn't need another team to tie or lose or anything like that. They got there on their own. So I think for them, next season, they need to get there on their own again, get to that championship. Maybe not win, but a win would be nice. But I think getting there would be their ceiling. But definitely this season, the MVP, in my opinion, would be Jules Moorbacher. That freshman coming in, getting 12 goals, leading the team. It's just been a stellar year for her. This team is young. They can develop. They can do it. I know they can.
And moving on over to the men's side of things, same score, 3-1 loss for the men. They fell to Geneva in Beaver Falls. And Waynesburg got on the board first. They got out to a 1-0 lead. And then Geneva proceeded to put 3 more in the back of the net. Same thing as women. What happened defensively that kind of collapsed for the team?
For this one, I'm not really sure. I was looking back on tapes and stuff, and the team looked solid. They looked good going in, and they looked good coming out. So I think the main thing was maybe there was just some communication that they lost there, something like that. Zachary Johnson did great in this game, and he's done great all season, but there was just something off about this team, and I can't really put my finger on it. I do know one thing is that away, they've been 3-6-1 on the season, and at home, they're 7-1-1. So at home, they clearly shine. But they were away. And maybe that got to them. Maybe that stat they knew about. Maybe something came up. But I can't really put my finger on it as to why they did so poorly in this game. But I think that this can be a bounce back for them.
So we look at the game, we're going to continue to talk about the defense. But what I'm thinking is that maybe this defense just got gassed over time, because we look at the offense. They only had 3 shots, 2 on goal. So a lot of that time was left on their own side. So do you think, Joey, that maybe the defense just got gassed and they've been playing almost the whole game on their side of the pitch? So do you think that maybe the defense got a little bit gassed and kind of fell apart? Because they had a 1-0 lead, and it kind of just fell apart from there.
I think the defense really just got involved a little too early. I think they were, like you said, they were getting gassed. They put in a lot of effort at first, and then it came back to bite them in the end, where they sadly fell short and lost. But I think that this team was mainly just relying on their goaltender there. He had 90 saves on the season, a 71% save percentage on the year, which is amazing. But I think they relied a little too much on that defense. I think they maybe made some substitutions a little too early, in my opinion, which led them to give up some of those goals late.
And we talked about the defensive side of the ball in this game, but offensively, this was probably the worst offensive game we've seen from Waynesburg this season. 3 shots, 2 of them being shots on goal. That's their fewest shots since a 4-0 loss to Grove City last year. You have Zachary Johnson, who was a top goal scorer, not only for Waynesburg, but one of the best in the entire conference. How does Geneva just go about shutting down that main guy and then closing the rest of the valves for the Waynesburg offense?
Well, I think what they really did was they studied. They came into this game knowing what Zachary Johnson was capable of, and they shut him down early, and they shut him down hard. 3 shots, like you said, is just poor. You can't have that in playoff contention. And this team, they shined with Zachary Johnson. And last year, like you said, the last time they did this was last year against Grove City. And they weren't able to hold up to this. Zachary Johnson wasn't there last year. He came in this year having a great season, and they shut him down. And they knew Zachary Johnson was their golden star, and Geneva came in and they said, nope, we're shutting you down. You can't do that here. You got to rely on your other people. And they weren't able to really rely on them.
Yeah, but great seasons from the soccer team in general. They have had excellent and played consistent and had a lot of us cheering and giving them some love that I feel like they were not given throughout the years. Very underappreciated, but now I feel like it'll be up on the upcline. But don't go anywhere. We got Brett Gambita for football. Welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly. For this segment, we're going to be getting into football and their huge win they had on Saturday. They weren't doing a lot of this, but doing a lot of this. We got Brett with us, Brett Gambita, to talk about football. So, Brett, let's start off with Zane Cawley, who has had a record-breaking game last week. Quit laughing. And we're going to talk about how he has really improved and what we can look forward to next year. So, can you just talk to us a little bit about the sophomore that is going to be coming up for the next couple of games and next year's?
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, he's only a sophomore, and he's already putting together games like this, rushing for 336 yards. He actually only had 371 coming into the game, and now he's 3rd in the PAC. If he can do this as a sophomore and terrorize defenses like this, we could see that for years to come.
So obviously, big game on the ground. 41 carries Zane Cawley had. We could even say that Cawley beat Bethany by himself. But when it comes to the passing game, no Sam Barber. Do you think that might have had some effect on the approach of this game, going in and just feeding Zane Cawley the football?
I think that was definitely the game plan coming in. I mean, considering the fact as well that Bethany had one of the worst rush defenses in the league, it made sense to give the ball to Zay Cawley and he delivered, having 4 touchdowns, 43 yards, 2 yards, 21 yards, 9 yards. We didn't even really need to rely on Burke much in this game.
Yeah, we could see Burke only had 38 passing yards. They had more rushing attempts than passing yards. Got the win though. But anyway, so they were actually down at one point, Waynesburg. They were down 26-21 at some point into that game. So Brett, can you talk about how that team was able to come back firing and not give up, which have been the moral of the story a little bit lately of kind of having the lead and then giving it up? What made this Waynesburg team stick with it and continue the offensive push to get the win?
Yeah, I think as you guys know, it's not about how you start. It's really about how you finish. And like you said, we trailed 26-21 entering the fourth quarter, and we ended up outscoring them 14-0 in that quarter and ultimately getting the win. So if we can come up big like that when it matters, I feel like that's what will put this team over the edge.
So obviously we know this year the team only able to capitalize on 2 wins with W&J coming up. But to focus some on the defensive side of the ball, still a monumental amount of penalties in this game. 12 more penalties added on to the season total this year. But the defense made some big stops. Who are some guys that you want to point out directly from this game that maybe shined more than the rest?
I feel like one of the unsung heroes from this game was J.J. Valle-Smith, recording 11 tackles, which now puts him at 2nd in the PAC. He also had a pass breakup and blocked a punt, so he was really doing it on all cylinders for that Waynesburg defense. And if he wasn't in there, it would have been even tougher to get the win than what it was.
So the Waynesburg Yellow Jackets have one more game, and that is our rival, our 79 rival W&J. Don't wear red this week. So Brett, are there any chances that this Waynesburg team can come out? I know they've had a very bad year, but do they have any chance at all at going to W&J and potentially getting a win against that squad who has had a little bit of a down year compared to the last couple of years? So Brett, do you think there's any chance at all that this team can get the win?
I really feel like it's just about minimizing their attempts to score. If they get down in the red zone, we have to hold them to 3 or force a turnover, or else it's going to be like last year when we lost 56-0. W&J, they lead the pack in points, so just limit their points, and they beat Geneva 45-7. We struggled with Geneva, so I mean, if that doesn't tell the story right there, then I don't know what does.
So obviously we know W&J is one of the powerhouses in the PAC, and even looking at it from the past 3 matchups, Waynesburg has been outscored 177-0 over the last 3 matchups against W&J. So how can this team, not going off Seth, try and win this game, but how can this team try and make things close, at least get on the scoreboard this year?
I think it's simple. Limit the penalties. Like you said, 12 penalties have been added to the season total just on last week, and we ran 2 fake punts last week that got called back, or that was 2 weeks ago, my bad, but both got called back, and there was a lot of other stupid penalties in that game as well. If we can limit those, we could at least maybe have a chance, as long as we're minimizing their scoring attempts as well.
So we saw a lot of rushing, like we said already, but are we going to see any? Is there like a concern at the quarterback position, Brett? I know we've had a lot of injuries and stuff like that, but it seems like we have had just a little bit of a struggle at quarterback for the majority of the year. So do you think maybe in this W&J game we'll just continue to focus on that rushing, or will we branch out to passing just a little bit more than this week at Bethany?
I feel like Burke's performance against Bethany definitely showed us that Waynesburg doesn't really trust him as much as they trust Barber, and I feel like Barber will have a lot more pass attempts here against W&J in this upcoming game because they trust him more and he is the better quarterback.
Well, Brett, thank you very much for joining us here talking about the football team. Their final game against the Washington Jefferson Presidents will be covered on WCYJ-FM. Myself and Will Yoakum will have the call down there at the President's home turf. But for now, we're going to turn things over to PSA. We'll be back with Michael McKenzie to talk about volleyball.
Welcome back to JSW for our last segment, but not any disregard to Michael McKenzie, who's going to be talking about volleyball with us today. Now, Mike, let's get into a little bit of last game they played. They played a very rough game against Allegheny, and just give us a rundown, really, of what happened, why did it happen, blah, blah, blah. Go ahead, start us off.
So it was another straight set loss for the Waynesburg University volleyball team to Allegheny this time. And it was a bit of an unfortunate end to the season. Not just the loss to Allegheny itself, but the last 3 matches of the season, all straight set losses. And it wasn't the way Waynesburg wanted to end the season. They had only lost in straight sets in conference play one time heading into their third to last match of the season, and then they end the season with 3 set losses. So it wasn't the ending to the season that Coach Grossman and this team wanted to have. So.
And you just alluded to Emily Grossman, the head coach of the volleyball team. This year, obviously, overall-wise, you improved, but conference play, you're still stuck at that 1 win in conference play. You get Jordan Stein back, you get a couple other players back. How can she look to build on what she started this year in her 4th year now and maybe make Waynesburg a 3-4 win conference team?
Well, I think it starts with what they're going to return next year. You alluded to it, Jordan Stein, who had 507 digs this season, eclipsed 1,000 career digs on the year in the 507 she put up on the board this year. On October 16, she was awarded the PAC Defensive Player of the Week. She's a really good volleyball player. Having her come back for her senior season, she's going to play a really big leadership role next year. So leaning on her a little bit to be that leader, be that elite player that she was this year, that's going to be huge for Coach Grossman and this team. And you alluded to it, winning conference matches. They had played closer in conference matches than previously in the first 3 years of Coach Grossman's tenure as the Waynesburg University volleyball coach. But they got to start winning those matches. She's talked about it a lot this year, that they got to start winning those matches. That's the next step that this team wants to take, not just playing them close, taking them to 5 sets or 4 sets, starting to pick up those victories. That's the next step, and that's what they're going to look to do next season.
So this volleyball team has had a not so good looking record at 8-17, obviously, but there have been so many games or sets, I should say, where they were so close but ended up looking so bad. I mean, they lost last time 0-3 against Allegheny. 25-23 loss, 25-23 loss, 25-21 loss. Michael, how can this team switch from being looking like an 0-3 to finishing those sets and maybe turn things around? What can they do to avoid coming so close but yet so far?
I think it's a bit of a mentality thing. It seemed like you said it, Waynesburg would get off to great starts in sets. You'd get up, let's say 15-7 in a set, and then all of a sudden things start to crumble apart. That was a bit of a theme with Waynesburg this season, and I think that's a mentality thing. You know, you give up a couple of points, now it's 15-9, 15-10, and then you start playing a little tighter. Oh, look, we're about to blow this lead. We can't lose this set. You got to start playing with that mentality when you get to 15. We're this close. We're 10 points away. We got to go win this instead of playing tighter not to lose. And I think with a lot of young players this season, with a lot of sophomores and freshmen on this team, that mentality aspect, it's going to come as those players get experience, as they did this year. So next year, the mentality aspect for the Waynesburg University volleyball team, I think it's going to be a lot better, and that they start pulling out some of those wins compared to the 1-9 conference record they have this season.
So we talked about how it's the end of the season now. The ladies have the off season. Grossman's going to go out, find some new recruits, try and rebuild the seniors that she lost from this year. But looking at Grossman as a head coach for Waynesburg, it has not been the most successful. 22-68 overall with a 7-39 conference record as the head coach at Waynesburg. How can she turn things around, not only as herself as a coach, but building the right players to play the right positions, and as Seth said, close out these matches?
I think that this year, it seemed like with some of the rotations that were being made, sometimes it was a trial and error process. Put in some freshmen that hadn't gotten playing time in conference matches halfway through the conference season to see what she has in them. And she talked about, she puts those players in matches, in sets for a reason, because she believes in them. So I think as the season went on, she found some of the younger players that she's going to trust moving forward. Kendall Ellsworth's one freshman. Christina Zadrozny's another. Zadrozny, I believe, finished 4th on the team in kills this season as a freshman. Those are going to be a couple of freshmen she leans on. Sophomore Paige Mortimer is going to be another one. She finished 2nd in kills on this team this year. I think that it was a lot more trial and error this season as to which players she wants to lean on moving forward. Now that she has a better idea, that this team has a better idea of which players they do want to lean on to be able to win games, which players they want in close sets, 4th set, down 22-20. You got to have it to keep the match going. She knows which players she's going to put into the game in those situations, and I think that that's going to prove big dividends next year for Waynesburg.
So like we're going to keep talking about next year here. So you think the volleyball team, are they going to have kind of just like same thing like this year, or are they going to have a bigger jump, or are they going to even decline and be just like last year having a 3-22 record, or are they going to be able to jump forward and get some more wins and maybe just slowly start building up, or do you think they'll just have a jump?
I think from a record standpoint, it's obviously going to be hard to kind of decline from a 1-9 conference record, 8-17 in the season. The one positive I look at record-wise, they went 7-8 in non-conference play. That's just below 500 heading into PAC play. They had some momentum, obviously weren't able to capitalize on it, but they're starting to win games. They made a bit of a jump this year in non-conference play. I expect them to make a jump in conference play next season, especially with a lot of the youth that was on this team this year. They have experience now. They've gelled. They play together. You bring in a few freshmen from this potential recruiting class, add into that a little bit of depth. I think that this Waynesburg University volleyball team next season, I don't know if I'm going to say that they're going to the playoffs, that they're going to compete for a PAC championship, but I don't think they're going to be finishing 10th with only one conference win. I think that they're going to pick up some more conference wins compared to what they had this year and over the past few years with Coach Grossman leading this team.
Well, Michael, thank you very much for joining us here talking about the volleyball team. We're going to step away now as the episode has come to a wrap, but you can make sure to catch every single episode of Jacket Sports Weekly, not only on our cable channel here in Waynesburg, but on our WCTV YouTube page for weekly Jackets content. See you guys later.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.